to our top 8 cut. I'm super excited. This is gonna be one of us is gonna trip up over names, probably me, because we got double B's on stream. Bryan Kim versus Brendan Baker. I will accidentally at some point mix up which B is which one, and I'm very sorry in advance to both of you. But right now we have got on your left side, it is going to be Brendan's team, which is going to be the Armor Rouge, Masquerada, Palafin, Golden Go, Roaring Moon, and Iron Hands. And then on the other side is Bryan's team, which is going to be Talonflame, Golden Go, Great Tusk, Sylveon, Rotom Wash Form, and Meowscarada.
Yeah, I'm really partial to Palafin. I am a little biased, I will admit it. But this is a really interesting set that I haven't seen before. It has like bulk up leftovers, so that's going to be kind of interesting because I've run choice band Palafin, so I can only imagine what kind of damage it's doing if you manage to get like 2 bulk ups. Dear. But anyway, I just like that's got to be like a hard position to get into. But yeah, it's interesting. There are kind of like a lot of things that Palafin doesn't really like on the other team though. Like Rotom Wash and Meowscarada are probably like its 2 biggest enemies, but it does kind of like do a lot of work against the rest of the team, and we're kind of calling out some of the Paradox Pokemon that have been around all day. There's Iron Hands, Roaring Moon going up against a Great Tusk, so we'll get to see some of those hopefully. Iron Hands has had a pretty strong showing at this tournament, which I think makes sense. It's probably like one of the better Paradox Pokemon. Yeah, and even Great Tusk is going to be on stream here for a second time, which is cool too. I like Great Tusk a lot.
So we've got Talonflame and Rotom. Again, sometimes some of these leads make me think, what year is it really? But it'll be down against that Armor Rouge and Iron Hands. So in a way, we've actually got a pass versus like, you know, present sort of like leads going on. But honestly, like looking at the Talonflame set, the Talonflame set is very interesting. It's Terran Coast with a Covert Cloak, just to really make sure you can't stop it from being faked.
You cannot fake out that Talonflame.
No matter what happens.
And Brendan did not, so that's good at least. Yeah, but I think that the idea is right. Whether or not you need both of those things is obviously up for debate. But one of them being enough to not get faked out and guarantee that you get a Tailwind down in every turn. But he is actually just gonna go for the Terra there.
Yeah, so you know, at least you don't take any damage from the fake out as well here. But which actually is nice because at least like the Gale Wings is still intact here, as Iron Hands actually goes for the fake out instead into the Rotom spot here, as Talonflame goes for a taunt onto the Armor Rouge. Is gonna make sure that you can't get any sort of things like Trick Room getting up, Rotom flinching here, but Trick Room being shut down as intended with that Talonflame's taunt. So honestly, kind of like a great like turn for Bryan there.
Yeah, it's a pretty good first turn there for Bryan, where basically he just kind of like stops anything that could have gone on there. I thought that potentially just going for an attack or tearing with Armor Rouge might have been like an okay play, and just like going for psychic damage, especially because you know where the taunt is when we're playing with these open team sheets, that would have been a really easy thing to play around and not kind of just like going all in on trying to get Trick Room up on turn 1, especially with this Talonflame that's like blocking fake out 200 times out of 100, right? But instead, this is a pretty okay position for Bryan. Like this Rotom is gonna be in position to start doing a lot of causing a lot of trouble, whether it be Hydro Pumping or Thunderbolting, and Palafin takes the field as Regina is like suddenly short of breath here.
I have not seen Shiny Palafin.
Oh, I ran.
So because I totally played you in San Diego.
Oh, just wait until you see the hero. It's so cool. It's even cooler.
Hopefully we get to see the hero here, but you know, Talonflame able to go for that priority Gale Wings here, as we actually did get another Terra here from that Armor Rouge. It is that Grass Terra type. Willow actually able to land that Willow was so great choice here for Bryan, as it catches that Palafin on the switch in. So even with all those it's gonna get a lot of bulk ups to get rid of like that damage being negated by this Armor Cannon here from Armor Rouge going into that Talonflame does a lot of damage. Still able to break through that Gale Wings at least, so there is that Brave Bird no longer a priority move here. But that Palafin, honestly, that's a really rough spot for it to be in.
Yeah, it really doesn't like to be burned. It really doesn't like to be burned.
I don't think anybody really likes to be burned.
Yeah, so now it does have the opportunity to like Jet Punch Talonflame and prevent it from moving again, which is something that it has going for it. But it really also doesn't like Rotom being there. So it's probably around now where if my main offensive game plan was Palafin, I would start to consider other options. But the Will-O-Wisp was like basically free because Iron Hands was there in that spot, and it, unlike its present day brethren, does not have guts, does not like to be burned, and then you could kind of see there that Brendan has multiple visible attackers in the back there, so there's really, you know, it's just a free Will-O-Wisp into that slot 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, so Iron Hands comes into play here for that Palafin, so switching out with it again. If Talonflame goes behind a protected turn, Thunderbolt from Rotom going to go into the Iron Hands spot. Iron Hands eats that up very nicely. Armourouge going for the Psychic, though, is going to land into that protected spot, so Talonflame lives to see another day thanks to that Protect. And actually, Armourouge able to shake off that Taunt now, so, you know, no reason actually really to go for a Trick Room still here, because you do know that Talonflame would be able to like taunt you again if it really needs to.
I think this is the most turns I've ever seen a Talonflame spend on the field. Like usually it tailwinds and then it gets knocked out, or like maybe it gets tailwind and then attack, but it's actually sticking around a little longer here, and it's actually probably going to get to go for, oh, it's definitely going to get to go for another attack here, right? Do a little bit of damage, maybe knock itself out with Brave Bird. It does love to do that. Or just taunt to prevent the Trick Room going up again. I think that's also an option. And it looks like that's... I don't know if I would risk the... Oh, no, it Armor Cannon. So you could definitely Brave Bird here instead of taunting and just take the knockout. Yeah, I think that's
and so, you know, Rotom going to hide behind that Protect so the Fake Out doesn't happen here. Armourouge is going to go down thanks to that Brave Bird from Talonflame. Talonflame just fast even without those priority moves here,
really
especially on this here. Talonflame is going to take some recoil damage for its troubles, but takes down that Armourouge alongside it, so no more Terra Pokemon for either trainer here. They are both going to have to switch in here. That Palafin is now in its hero form. I'm so sad that it got burned a little bit, just because it would have been so great to see it come back on the field. But Meowscarada and Great Tusk actually going to hit the field for both of their fallen partners on here, so we get to see that Iron Tusk here. It is going to have that booster energy here to activate that photosynthesis. Is going to get another attack. Is going to get that like slight attack boost as well. So still a scary Pokemon.
Yeah, it is, and I think this is a really good spot to bring Meowscarada in right after Rotom has protected, because you can basically like either force like a passive turn out of that slot, or just go straight for the Flower Trick if you think that Rotom is going to stay in, or, you know, depending on what it's in the back. If it's like Goldengo or Sylveon's going to take a lot of damage from a Flower Trick, so that's cool too. But yeah, Iron Hands is going to back out for now, even though I sort of liked that. Oh, maybe it's spearing a headlong rush.
Oh my god, that's so cute. That is legitimately the first time that I've like,
Isn't
I've
it
seen
so
this.
good?
That's adorable and fantastic. So Iron Hands, actually Iron Hands and Palafin just keep subbing out for each other here as Meowscarada protects itself on this turn. Rotom going for the Will-O-Wisp into like that Meowscarada spot right now, guys. I'm so into the way that this Palafin looks like as a shiny form. Is going to have to take a headlong rush for its troubles here, but Great Tusk is going to lose that stage of defense and special defense. But you know, the leftovers at least going to try to get a little bit back of that HP. But honestly, like this burn is just going to sort of work against it. Like, I think at this point, like it's a Pokemon that you're just like, here, I need you to just take some damage here as Tailwind is finally going to expire.
Right. Yeah. And now Meowscarada has a little bit more pressure there. And I think it's possible. I think a Wave Crash might be enough to knock out Great Tusk. I'm not certain that Jet Punch is after it's burned, but it's probably pretty close. Yeah, I don't really know that calc off the top of my head, but I think also Great Tusk like doesn't necessarily need to stay in here. It is, but maybe it didn't need to, depending on what's in the back.
Yeah, so Rotom here going to protect on this turn, preventing any damage from that Flower Trick from Meowscarada. I'm going to stick around for at least one other turn here as Palafin's Wave Crash here is going to be able to get into that great. Ooh, just barely misses that knockout. That honestly, it's just going to... You kind of hate to see it if you're Brendan, because Palafin does take that recoil damage here, but that burn really paying off dividends here for Bryan as Great Tusk is going to go for the Earthquake here. Wouldn't really have mattered for... that Rotom, but Meowscarada taking considerable amount of damage still from that. Like honestly, even with that non-effectiveness here, and it actually I think breaks the focus sash here for that Meowscarada as well.
Yeah, I think that's the important part, right? And now that Iron Hands is in, I think you can pretty freely like Flower Trick the Rotom and fake out into the Great Tusk slot. But there were a couple like kind of interesting dynamics going on with the Palafin into Great Tusk. There is that the first one was that it's possible that if Great Tusk was trained in a certain way that it could have been faster than Palafin. Assuming this is like a bulky Palafin because it's running leftovers and bulk up. So hovering over Jet Punch, maybe not necessarily incorrect. Yeah, and then the Wave Crash not doing enough damage was also very interesting, and I was actually kind of surprised to see that it took that even after a headlong rush.
Yeah, so that Iron Tusk is actually going to protect itself to prevent any fake out damage as Meowscarada on Brendan's side catches the Meowscarada on Bryan's side. Still going to do a lot of damage thanks to that critical hit guaranteed every single time from Flower Trick.
Yep, and this is actually a pretty good position for Brendan. I think you can pretty freely like go for a close combat into Meowscarada and then a Flower Trick into the Great Tusk. because you can just prevent Great Tusk from moving at all, and then you do a lot of damage to either Meowscarada or Rotom, although I guess, you know, you're taking a Flower Trick potentially. But this is an okay position, even though he's down Pokemon. I think this is an okay place to be going into the end of the game here.
All right, and so Bryan's Meowscarada moving first, not enough to pick up the knockout on Brendan's own Meowscarada. This is a different type of cat fight that we're seeing here, as Meowscarada now from Brendan's side going to pick up that easy knockout here on that Great Tusk. Was definitely just any sort of like, you kind of hit it and it gets knocked out range. So Great Tusk goes down here, as now Iron Hands is able to go and get into that Meowscarada with a close combat. That sash was already broken thanks to that previous turn. So it is going to get knocked out, and only that Rotom is going to be facing down against these two Pokemon. And Rotom Wash specifically facing down against something like a Flower Trick, not in it for a good time.
Yeah, no, the game's pretty much over here. I thought that probably Rotom didn't necessarily need to be preserved there. I think that Bryan was a little afraid of like letting it get knocked out, but we already knew which Pokemon Brendan had brought. So I think that probably just like sacking off Rotom and making sure that your own Meowscarada gets onto the field with its sash intact was probably the correct play, so that it's at least guaranteed like an extra action from the sash. But instead he kind of like switched it right in, and then allowed it to be knocked out as a result with no sash there. Which allowed Brendan to like kind of take the end game there. Yeah,
I think it's also kind of rough too, and like, you know, if you're looking for your Palafin to be something like your heavy attacker, then you've got issues when you're taking a Will-O-Wisp, right? Like, I mean, that was kind of the difference.
Didn't end up mattering, I guess.
It kind of does, just because for him to like win, but I think it's just like, it's one of those like, you could have gotten rid of that Iron Tusk just a little bit earlier, kept your Meowscarada's like own focus sash intact,
yeah,
right?
I think
and
that's
like
true.
you're in like even though like you win that game, at least you're in a better spot to keep like being able to win it like more comfortably, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because it always kind of hurts when you see your focus sash and you're just like, well, doesn't do anything anymore, right?
Right, yeah, where you just switch it in and it's gone. Yep.
Yeah, I think like I kind of agree with you in terms of like Bryan's side, where like that Rotom is at a certain point it did its job, right? It put enough pressure and it was able to land like the like a really kind of crucial like Will-O-Wisp that, you know, would have been nice to like be able to capitalize a little bit more on, but at the end of the day it's just like, oh, okay. What's surprising is that Talonflame staying around for long enough to pick up a knockout on an Armarouge. Yeah,
that Talonflame did really well. I think that's probably the lead that I like the most from Bryan, is probably like Rotom plus something to check Meowscarada, because the Rotom is like pretty important, right? As we saw it through the burn down, it has super effective damage that it's threatening onto a couple Pokemon on Brendan's team, but it's also like a situation where you have to know like when it's time to cut bait with it, you know, I think maybe it wouldn't have changed the result of the end game, but I think there was like more of a chance if you had full health Meowscarada's sash intact. But instead Goldengo is going to come here, which, well, at least it can't be faked out.
Nothing can be faked out here on Bryan's side of the field, as Talonflame and Goldengo both are able to just at least, like, you know, not have to worry about that, as Armarouge and Iron Hands is still going to be the lead of choice here. Goldengo, honestly, it's... I mean, it's not terrible. It's just that Iron Hands is just going to be like really annoying to just sort of have to worry about. And as you can see on like the armor, you know, it's got that wide guard, so you're going to have to really be careful what you're going to click if you're Bryan. I mean, I still think there's nothing wrong with going for something like the
oh, it doesn't. Like I don't think it has wide guard. I don't think it
Armarouge?
Oh, the Armarouge does.
Yeah, the Armarouge does.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said the Hands. I was
like,
oh gosh, I don't think so.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fine. Like, it's a strong Pokemon. It's gonna be able to throw down damage. Obviously, that wasn't like the best lead for it, but one of the good things is that Bulky Palafin can switch into this potential Make It Rain pretty well. And if it is Make It Rain, it's not really going to do a lot of damage to either of these Pokemon. It's going to be resisted, but since it's a Shadow Ball, that feels a lot worse.
Yeah, Palafin's going to have to...
That's a crit. That's not a crit.
Palafin's just taking just so much damage every single time it comes in.
That's a crit.
As Iron Hands is able to get a Wild Charge down into this Goldengo. Brendan just baffled by this, by that. Yeah, I mean, this poor Palafin though, right? Like, this is like the second time that like it's coming into here, and like the first time it got burned, the second time it's just taking just a Shadow Ball to the face, and like, you know, if you're Palafin, you're not here for a good time right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about cutting bait with Pokemon. This might be an okay time to cut bait with Palafin. I don't know that you really have a strong switch in with these combination of Pokemon on the field, so you might just have to kind of like Jet Punch and let it be knocked out. which we hate. We didn't get to see. We're not gonna get to see the hero if that happens. But I don't really know, what else you can really do.
Oh yeah, and so Talonflame protecting itself this turn as Jet Punch does some good damage here onto that Golden Go. Still here though, as actually Brendan doubles down into that Golden Go, is completely ignoring this Talonflame, and Golden Go is just gonna be like, hey, I managed to get some damage out, but it will be knocked out for this game. And at least, hey, Palafin is doing its best, getting a little bit of HP back with that that leftover. Still out of the red for now, still kind of in a really precarious spot.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good offensive position for Bryan, especially given that Palafin is basically like over. Palafin is canceled. It's probably just going to go for a Jet Punch into the Talonflame slot here before it gets knocked out, and then Iron Hands is obviously being threatened by being knocked out by a Headlong Rush here. So this is a pretty good offensive position for Bryan, and Talonflame is really kind of like the Pokemon that it's got to be doing a lot of work. It's not a Pokemon that I usually associate with doing a lot of work, but it is doing a lot of work here in this game.
All right, well, Iron Hands is actually going to leave the battlefield this turn. We're going to see, instead of switching into Meowscarada here, that Meowscarada that we know for sure has like that Focus Sash, is going to be like, is going to have to break it this turn, most likely, as we see the Great Tusk getting terrestrialized into ground, and that, folks, is a scary Terra type to see on an already kind of like intense Pokemon here, as Talonflame goes for that Brave Bird, is able to just easily pick up that knockout here on that Palafin. Palafin goes down, trying its best. Did not go down as a hero this time though, as Talonflame is going to break its own Gale Wings thanks to that recoil damage. An Earthquake here from that Great Tusk, boosted by that Terra typing. Meowscarada is going to survive this because of the fact that it does have that Sash, but also it's still in like the orange, like for its health. It's just that's still kind of rough for it.
Yeah, it took a lot of damage there, given that that's a resisted attack. Yeah, the ground Terra I think is a really smart one for Great Tusk, because it allows it to ditch some of the weaknesses that it has as a result of being a fighting type. Not that it was really threatened there too. I just think it's a good typing. It does a lot of damage. It's kind of like Garchomp, where if you get in a position to click multiple like Terra Ground Earthquakes, you're probably winning the game. And it's definitely kind of in position to be threatening those sorts of things here as well, given that I believe this is just going to be a double protect followed by another Tailwind by Talonflame. Although does Talonflame speed tie Meowscarada? Oh no, it's Noivern. It's Noivern. I always forget.
And like right now, there's 3 Pokemon on here, or 2 Pokemon here who are protecting, as Iron Hands goes for the Fake Out here, and that Talonflame is actually just able to go for another Brave Bird because Tailwind will expire this turn now.
Yeah.
But Meowscarada is just like, I'm gonna protect myself, so you cannot knock me out here. Tailwind is expiring now, but both Iron Hands and Meowscarada are still kind of in a rough
Talonflame's
spot.
faster than Meowscarada. Okay, because I'm trying to think. I was thinking that Bryan probably wants to make sure Talonflame is here for one more turn so that you can Tailwind again. But because it just manages to like survive that turn, I guess it's fine. So you just get to go for a Tailwind plus an Earthquake here and take 2 knockouts.
Oh, just kidding. Great Tusk says no thank you.
Are you afraid of Sucker Punch?
As Sylveon actually takes the place before, so don't count it out just because it's a little bit small. And Great Tusk is gonna have to take a Flower Trick for that switch in.
Max speed
thanks
Talonflame,
to
maybe?
thanks to that critical hit. As Talonflame is like, hey, you didn't attack me, I'm gonna set up another Tailwind, and sometimes that's all you really need. As Iron Hands goes for the Wild Charge into the Talonflame spot, is able to pick up that knockout here, but Talonflame did what it does best before it got knocked out, and that was set up the speed control for Bryan's side of the field, as Iron Hands does take some of that recoil damage. Sylveon is just kind of like, here, we're gonna tag out and it'll be totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, you probably just think about just like earthquaking your own Sylveon here, right? Like, what's in the back? What's in the back for Brendan?
I think it's Armor Rouge.
That's right. Yeah, so you can just Earthquake your own Sylveon here, right? And it doesn't even matter. Great Tusk just cleans up either way.
Yeah.
You can try and switch it in. But yeah, sorry, what I was thinking was that Talonflame was going to be faster so that you could just Tailwind plus Earthquake this turn, but it turns out that it's like a bulkier Talonflame, I guess, so it was actually slower than Meowscarada. So this is the correct play to make sure that your Tailwind is up once you get Great Tusk back onto the field.
Alright, Meowscarada is going to protect itself this turn, and Sylveon's also going to protect itself this turn.
It can't save itself forever.
It can save itself this turn, however, as Great Tusk is going to go for the Earthquake, and it might as well have just clicked something into just the Iron Hands itself because of all those protects. Iron Hands is really just going to be the only Pokemon getting hit from this. So from one Paradox Pokemon to another, here is the gift of Earthquake that Iron Tusk decides to give it.
That's gonna be bonk from me. Yeah, and then I guess you get to is it Terra Grass Armor Rouge? Yeah, so I guess that's probably what you're playing to here is a Terra Grass Armor Rouge, so that at least you're not taking super effective damage from the Earthquake, but also this Great Tusk is still at full health and it's not weak to Psychic anymore. So I think this is like still a pretty good Great Tusk position. Unfortunately, it looks like he is going to be forced to like Earthquake is Sylveon, but also I guess you're playing around an opposing wide guard as well, so you do have to like target and click your attacks correctly. So this is kind of like, I think it's favoring Bryan, but there are definitely ways for Brennan to win.
Yeah, it's still like a little bit rough because at some point, right, if you don't knock out at least one Pokemon here, or like at least knock out the Armor, then you just wide guard for days and just get hit like consistently by like the Meowscarada Flower Trick. So, I mean, this is one of those end games where it's like you really have to think about what you're clicking into, because if you, I think, target down wrong, then you just...
Well, I mean, I think if you Earthquake into wide guard, like, that's really bad.
That feels bad. Yeah, that feels terrible. But Armor Rouge is going to be like, hey, I'm going to get rid of this, of some of this typing. Go for the Grass Terror one more time here. As Great Tusk actually goes for close combat into Armor Rouge. Does a considerable amount of damage here. Is going to take down that defense and special defense by one stage for its troubles here. As Meowscarada's Flower Trick is going to be doing a lot of damage now
so
here. As Great Tusk is going to get one hit knocked out here. It is, you know, that minus stage and that super effectiveness. So you do lose your Terra Pokemon here, but honestly, like that Sylveon was still in a really good spot, and so Terra Blast actually from Sylveon is going to be able to take care of that Armor Rouge. And honestly, now that you don't have to worry about the wide guard, you could just probably go for another Terra Blast. Or you could go for Hyper Voice. Either way, I think Sylveon might actually can.
Brennan managed to win this.
Are you?
What?
Oh yeah.
I think Flower Trick knocks out from here. Okay, that was not the combination of attacks that I was expecting, and I think you have to target Meowscarada with something. Like, even if you go for some sort of spread move, like, there are situations where, like, you're basically just saying to, like, Armor Rouge, okay, you can't wide guard and also attack at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of positions that you kind of, like, want to be in, and it looked like you could kind of see that he was a little afraid of clicking the spread moves because of wide guard, but I think that you can still click, like, even if you're afraid of wide guard, you can click like Headlong Rush plus Hyper Voice and still
I was expecting a Headlong Rush, and I wasn't expecting the close combat.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there was probably a better combination of attacks. I'd have to go back and look at it again. Yeah. But Tailwind was up, so both Pokemon were. Oh, I wonder.
No, the Sylveon was still slower. It was still yeah, because the Meowscarada.
No, it wasn't. I don't know. You're right. It was. Yeah, you're right.
Because it picked up the knockout on Iron Tusk, and then Sylveon
Terra Blasted.
went for Terra Blast,
okay, so maybe that's what it was.
So, I mean, because Sylveon's just slow-ish in
was
general.
there not a better combination of attacks?
I feel like I thought Headlong Rush was going to go into the